Hello, neurohackers. I'm excited to share this with you today. It's a new FMRIPREP development environment that I'm working on. It's actually not the one that's suggested here in the top comment in this NeuroStars question that I asked, but it's something that Chris suggested that I also try down here. Now, I took a little break, but I finally came back and gave a more fully fledged answer, and I'm going to be trying to integrate this with the FMRIPREP code base. So I'm going to walk through how to use what Chris suggested, which is code server, with FMRIPREP, and how to create a fully fledged FMRIPREP development environment where you don't need to download anything else after you download this. So the benefit is going to be you don't need to install FreeSurfer, you don't need to install FSL, AFNI, or any of these other complex dependencies in order to get FMRIPREP to work on your own machine. And you also get the benefit of working inside a really nice integrated development environment. It's like VS Code. Because before, we could get the benefits of the first thing, where we have all the dependencies installed for us with Docker, but the downside of Docker is that it typically doesn't provide nice graphical user interfaces. So when you're trying to run FMRIPREP through Docker, you just get a bunch of text, and it can be hard to debug and travel through the code base to see exactly what's going wrong where. And what's nice about VS Code is that you're able to dig into where the error is happening and get straight to the point with a graphical user interface. But the downside of typical VS Code, if you just install VS Code on your laptop, then you're going to have to take care of all of the development environment dependencies yourself, which is quite frankly a nightmare. So what this solution offers is a way to have a containerized environment with VS Code. So that was also what my first solution was up here, but I think that Chris's suggestion is a little bit cleaner, or it turns out to be a little bit cleaner, and is probably a little bit more deployable across other instances. So it'll be easier to say spin up a VS Code editor just using a browser somewhere else. So that said, we're going to get started here. I have the documentation for the code server development. This is still just the local documentation that I've written up right now. There's not a lot of steps to it, but there are, and it might look different from what you're looking at because this might change throughout the pull request process, or it might become something totally different, but I hope that it stays relatively similar so that you can follow along. There's really just two steps to it since we already have the Docker file built, so we need to, or at least we have this recipe specified. We don't have the image built yet, so we'll copy this command here to build the Docker image, and it's just saying docker build, tag it with fmriprep_devel. That could be whatever you want to name it, and the file that we're using is dockerfile_devel, which is the development Docker file that contains all the steps necessary in order to get code server up and running and install all of the FMRIPREP test datasets and get the environment set up for our development environment. All right. And before that, we also had to cd into the FMRIPREP directory that you already have cloned. So I am assuming with this tutorial, or with this little walkthrough, that you have both FMRIPREP cloned and on your terminal that you have Docker installed. And I will say this is that I don't have this working with Docker Toolbox yet. So if you have to use Docker Toolbox, I'm sorry, I don't have it working yet for Docker Toolbox. But maybe the documentation will update that when we get that working. Okay. So we'll hop over to our terminal here. We're already in the FMRIPREP directory. If I hit ls, we'll see all the FMRIPREP stuff for the particular Git branch that I'm on. So there are some files that if you tried to run, if you tried to do this like today, today being August 14th, 2019, this will not work. But if you go onto my code server branch on my repository on JD Kent, then then you'll get the same functionality. But hopefully you'll be seeing this sometime in the future in which this is already integrated in some fashion. All right. So I hit Control-Shift-V to paste the command into my terminal, and I can hit Enter here. And this went super fast for me because I've already built this. So everything was already pre-cached or pre-ran and saved on my computer already. If it's not, it might take a long estimate will be an hour. So find a place that you can leave your laptop or whatever your development machine is with a steady internet connection for an hour. Hopefully it'll finish faster than that, but it'll depend on your internet connection speed. All right, so with that built, we should have something called FMRIPREP Develop latest. I can do Docker images to see what's up. Yep, we have that. The top one here, FMRIPREP Develop latest. And step 2 is to run the Docker image. So we can take this command, copy, paste it here. Now the important bits is that if we run it interactively, that means we can shut it down by hitting Control-C at the terminal to just quit everything and shut down the code editor. The port that we are giving it access to is 8445. So what we're going to do with this 127.0.0.1 colon 8445, that was a bit of a mouthful. We're going to copy and paste that into our browser in a second so that we can have access to the VS Code editor. And then the port that it's mapping to inside the container is 8080, which is now the default port for this version of code server. So again, these details might change, but the same concept should remain. And then what we want to do is mount the current working directory or the present working directory into the container so that any changes that we make to the VS Code are represented inside the code that we have on our machine. So if you want to read up the concept of mounting, I kind of have a prerequisite of you somewhat understanding what Docker does. So if you need a refresher on that, look up mounting and port mapping, and that will give you some of the basic ideas of what's going on with the Docker command here. So if I hit enter, we should see this information. This will be where it's looking at on the Docker container within the container, or yeah, within the container. But we want to look at where we map to. So we'll go back to our browser here. We'll copy paste that link in. And with any luck, yes, we see our FMRIPREP code divide. Well, we see VS Code and we see FMRIPREP here. So we can actually access things. We can look at the run. The Python extension is loading. It's looking up the tests, which is awesome. So a couple things just to direct you towards here is that we can go over to this test on the activity bar. So any of the tests that we have written for FMRIPREP, we can run in VS Code, and VS Code provides a nice interface to run these tests. So I can just hit run on the tests, and it will go through and actually run the test, and I can click on these to see where the tests are actually defined, and it will run those for me. We can see the add volumes and remove volumes, and we can see that those tests succeeded, so we know that all that works. Then we can run these tests as well. But the main idea that I want to get out of this is that we have everything that we need installed to run FMRIPREP with code server, and that we have all the or most of the test data that we need to get things working. So one more feature that I want to really show off here is this debug tab. So in case you've ever wanted to try to step through and understand what FMRIPREP is doing step by step, you could put in a little red dot here, which in VS Code will instantiate a breakpoint or create a breakpoint for you. And what this breakpoint will do is that it will start running through the code with this debug command, and it'll stop you and give you back control as soon as it hits this line, which in FMRIPREP, this should be one of the first lines that's ran. Just to take a little peek at the underbelly, when we're running ds005-nat, we are running the FMRIPREP command with these particular options. So we're running on some of the real test data with a real FMRIPREP command, so we can understand exactly what's going on. And this will be super nice as soon as you start changing the code, and you can just run the test instantly to see if something breaks off the bat. Then you can put those these breakpoints that I was referring to near the places in which everything started going haywire, and you'll be able to find and track down bugs a lot faster than trying to submit it to Circle CI and waiting for the Circle CI to run, and then getting maybe an error that you kind of have an inkling of what you need to fix, but you're not quite sure. Then you make another change and try to figure out if that fixed it. But what this will help you is give you just a much tighter, it'll give you a tighter feedback loop so that you will be able to find and fix the errors as you write the code, which at least I know that I write a lot of errors. So having something like this to help me find those errors and squash those errors is really nice. So let's just show this off real quick. We'll get started, and then it'll drop me off, and I can see it right here where the line is, and I can see the line. I can see with the extension git lens, I can see who wrote this line. So I need to figure out, like, if I need some more context on who wrote this line, why was it done, and what is its purpose, just more context. I can figure that out by following what the commit messages were, at least ideally. But anyways, I can step through the code line by line. I can or step over the code line by line. I can step into the code into a function to see what the function is doing, and we can set up breakpoints at different points in the code just to see what's happening, what's going on. So I'll stop this here because I just want to showcase a little bit. And if I wanted to get rid of the breakpoint, let's say, all right, I don't have any expectations that this will fail, so I just want to start debugging. And if I just hit go, then this will officially run the command, and it'll just run through the entire command as it would as if you had FMRIPREP installed locally. Here we can see that, yep, it's setting up and it's getting started to run, and it'll run through each of the steps in order to get the data processed. So yeah, that's basically the parts that I wanted to show off. This is VS Code has be become a very dominant editor in the field, and stuff like this just makes it easier and easier to get up and running with code. And get up and running and starting to mess with code and play with FMRIPREP. Say if you wanted to mess with things and break things, then this gives you a nice environment to break your code and test out to see what happens if you try out something new. And it just makes it really, really accessible in my opinion. You just have to go through the pain of installing Docker, and your laptop needs to be new enough to be able to install Docker. So, and then, yeah, just learning a few of those concepts about Docker can make your experience a little bit smoother. But just being able to install Docker is really the strongest prerequisite that we need. So, hope you enjoyed listening to this. I ramble a little bit, but hopefully I've shown you some of the nice features of using Code Server with VS Code and having this run within the FMRIPREP development environment. And I hope that you can find this useful. All right, thanks for listening. Happy hacking. And stop.